everyone, welcome to the Inquisitive Reader. My name is Amy, and today I'm going to talk to you about 3 kinds of books I've been loving lately and how they've changed my life. The first kind of book I've really been enjoying these days is the classic. I define a classic as a book that has stood the test of time. These are books that have been read and loved and talked about for decades or even centuries since they were first published. The first classic I read that opened my eyes to why this kind of book is such a big deal was Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. I read this book when I was about 16, and to this day I'm really not sure why I decided that this would be a fun book to read at 16, but I read it, and it remains to this day one of my proudest accomplishments. Tom Jones it's intense, to say the least. I mean, it's really, really long and very small print, and there are whole paragraphs of it written in Latin. I'm pretty sure they're quotes from important ancient philosophers, but I'm really not sure about that because I don't speak Latin. Every other chapter is like a rabbit trail where the author gives a mini sermon about what the characters have been getting into. So all things considered, it's a pretty challenging book to read, but by the time I finished it, I finally understood why classic books are such a big deal. Classic literature talks about things that matter. The theme of Tom Jones is that no matter how good your intentions are and how pure your heart is, if you don't know how to translate that into socially acceptable behavior, no one's going to appreciate what an awesome person you are. Now, you can decide whether you agree or disagree with this conclusion, but the fact of the matter is that this issue is still relevant to us today. I know that I personally have wrestled with how much I should go along with what society expects of me. Do I have to play by society's rules if I want to get along with other human beings? This is an issue that is just as relevant in the 21st century as it was in the 18th century when Tom Jones was published. And that's why I'm enjoying classic literature. It makes me think about things that matter, things that have always mattered. And when I think about those things, it changes the way I approach my life. The second kind of book I've really been enjoying these days is the nonfiction book. When I was younger, I really did not like nonfiction books. I thought they were dull and dry, and why would you read a boring book with facts and information when you could read a really exciting novel instead? Lately though, I've come to realize that nonfiction books can have a lot of information that can help me live a better life, and they're not always dry, dull, and boring. A nonfiction book I've enjoyed recently is Reading People by Bogel. This book is about personality and how understanding my personality and the personalities of people around me can help me be more confident as a person and more understanding of the people around me. When I read this book, it helped me see that some of the things about myself that I thought were contradictory were actually just part of my personality. For example, I really love people. I love being around them. But sometimes I get exhausted by them. Sometimes I just need to go be by myself, lock my door, read a book, and not interact with other human beings for a while. This book reassured me that that is perfectly normal for me. The book also helped me understand that some of the things about my family that I always thought were really crazy are just part of their personality, and it made me a much more compassionate and understanding person. I read nonfiction books because they help me improve in areas that matter to me. And that, to me, is not dull or boring at all. The third kind of book I've really been loving these days is literary fiction. Right after I read Tom Jones, I went through a phase when I thought that the only kinds of books that were worth my time to read were classics and nonfiction books. I think I felt this way because the only modern fiction I had access to at the time were Christian romance novels. While these books were very entertaining, they didn't really push me to be a better person, and they didn't inspire me to think about things that matter. Fortunately, before I got too depressed about the state of modern fiction, I discovered literary fiction. Literary fiction is a kind of book that is very entertaining, but it also brings up things that matter. I am completely indebted to Bogel, the author of Reading People, for introducing me to literary fiction through her blog, modernmrsdarcy.com. Anne recommends a ton of great books on her blog and on her podcast, What Should I Read Next? And I'll link to both of those in the description box below. When I started reading books that Anne had recommended, I was completely blown away. Here were books that had all the complexity that I loved about classic literature, but at the same time, they were really fun to read and they had modern language that was easier to understand. One of the very first literary fiction books I read was What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. This is a book about a 39-year-old woman who hits her head and loses the last 10 years of her memory. Within Alice's mind, she's a 29-year-old woman filled with all the optimism of life, but she's interacting with the circumstances of her 39-year-old life, which is not quite as rosy as she had expected it would be. I'm not going to spoil the book for anyone, but what it made me think about was that I get to choose the type of person I become as I grow older. 10 years from now, I want to be a better, more mature version of myself, but I still want to be myself. I don't want to be a completely different person that I don't even recognize anymore. I don't think that growing up means I have to become more cynical. I don't want to lose the enthusiasm and the sense of wonder I feel at life. And What Alice Forgot reminded me that maybe I don't have to. Literary fiction makes me think about things that matter while being really fun to read, and that's why I've been loving it these days. So there you have it, 3 kinds of books I've been loving lately and how they've changed my life. Let me know in the comments below what kind of books you like to read. What kind of books have changed your life? I'll put links in the description box below to all the books I've mentioned in this video, and I'll also link to Anne's blog and podcast so you can check those out. If you want to hear more about books, reading, and things that matter, subscribe to my channel or connect with me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm The Inquisitive Reader on Facebook and @Amy A. Flett on Twitter. Until next time, be brave, be brilliant, and be you. You got this. See you next time.